3 true road construction horror stories. Hey everybody, I'm glad y'all stopped by. You know, most people only see road construction when they're stuck waiting behind orange barrels. Maybe they slow down, drive through, then forget about it. But somebody has to build those roads. Somebody has to work out there after dark, operating machines that weigh more than most houses, digging through ground that's been untouched for decades, working miles from the nearest town. I started looking online to see if anyone in road construction had shared strange experiences. Turns out, there were quite a few. Tonight, I've picked 3 stories that really stood out to me. The people who posted them all claimed these events actually happened. Whether they did or not, I'll let y'all decide. All right, let's get into the first one. This first story was shared by a highway construction worker from rural Oklahoma. Here's what he had to say. I've worked highway construction for almost 16 years, mostly paving crews, some bridge work, a little bit of everything. People think it's just running equipment all day. Truth is, a lot of the work happens after the sun goes down. Less traffic, cooler temperatures, fewer people getting in the way. You get used to working under portable light towers. The smell of fresh asphalt, generators humming all night. Most shifts are long, but uneventful. You pave, pack up, go home. Then there are nights you remember for the rest of your life. This happened in late September. Our crew had been resurfacing an old 2-lane highway that cut through miles of ranch land. The road had been closed for nearly a week. No traffic, no houses nearby. Just us, and about 12 miles of empty pavement, around 1:30 in the morning. The foreman asked me to drive the water truck up to the next work zone. It was only about a mile ahead. I figured I'd be gone 5 minutes. I couldn't have been more wrong. The water truck wasn't fast, never was, fully loaded. It crawled along. I had the windows cracked just enough to let the smell of fresh asphalt drift inside. The portable light towers faded behind me. Before long, it was just my headlights. The road ahead looked brand new, fresh black pavement stretching through the darkness. No traffic. No animals. Nothing. About halfway to the next crew, I saw someone standing in the middle of the road, orange reflective vest, white hard hat, hands hanging at his sides. I eased off the throttle, figured one of the guys was trying to flag me down. I rolled closer. Maybe 50 yards away, something hit me. He wasn't wearing a flashlight. No radio. No reflective stripes on his pants. Just the vest, standing perfectly still. I stopped about 20 feet away, rolled my window down. You all right, buddy? Nothing. You need something? Still nothing. He never waved, never turned his head, just stood there. I reached for the spotlight mounted beside the driver's seat. The second I flipped it on, the road was empty. Nobody. I climbed down, walked to where he'd been standing. Fresh asphalt, not a single footprint. No boot prints, no tire marks besides ours. Nothing. I stood there scratching my head. Finally, I climbed back into the truck. You're tired. That's all. That's what I kept telling myself. I drove another quarter mile. Then the CB radio crackled. It was our foreman. You all right? Yeah. Why? We've been trying to reach you. My radio's been on. No. I mean, we've been calling your cell. I looked down. I had 6 missed calls. None of them had rung. You need to turn around. What happened? His voice got quiet. One of the laborers is missing. I felt my stomach sink. What do you mean missing? He walked off about 20 minutes ago. Name's Tommy. We've searched the whole work zone. Can't find him. I glanced in my mirror. The empty road disappeared into the darkness. You got on an orange vest? Yeah. White hard hat? Yeah. I didn't say anything. You seen him? I hesitated. I thought I did. I turned the truck around. The whole way back, I watched the mirrors. Nothing. When I reached the crew, everybody was already searching. Pickup headlights pointed into the fields. Flashlights sweeping across barbed wire fences. The sheriff even came out. They searched until daylight. Tommy was never found. About a week later, the state shut the project down for 1 day while investigators looked over the site again. One of the older equipment operators sat beside me. 30 years. I finally told him what I'd seen. He didn't laugh. Didn't even look surprised. He took another sip of coffee, then said, "You know what that highway used to be?" I shook my head. It followed the original road. "The one from the 1930s. He pointed toward the fields. "They moved it over about 50 feet when they widened it," I asked. "So?" He looked out across the empty pavement. "My granddad helped build the first one. Said one of the workers disappeared during construction. They never found him either." He stood up, brushed the dirt off his jeans. "And every few years, somebody says they see a man in an orange vest standing in the middle of the road. I'll tell you what, if I saw someone standing in the middle of a closed highway, I'd probably think they needed help too. But hearing that somebody disappeared in almost the exact same way decades earlier, that's the part that stuck with me." All right, let's move on to story number 2. This next story was shared by a bridge construction worker from West Virginia. Now, if you've ever driven across a bridge that's under construction, you've probably noticed all the lights, the cranes, the temporary barriers. What you don't see is how quiet it gets once traffic stops. Here's what he had to say. "I've been an ironworker most of my life. If there's steel going up, there's a good chance I've worked on something like it. Bridges, overpasses, river crossings. You get used to heights. You get used to working around heavy cranes. What you never really get used to is being out there after midnight." This happened while we were replacing an old steel bridge over the Kanawha River. The original bridge had stood there since the 1940s. By the time our crews showed up, most of it had already been torn apart. Only one section remained. Our job that night was simple. Remove the last pieces before sunrise. Around 2 o'clock, the crane operator radioed me. "Can you walk out and double-check those rigging straps?" "No problem." I clipped my safety harness to the lifeline, grabbed my flashlight, and started walking across what was left of the bridge. The river below was black. Couldn't see a thing. Just hear the water moving. When I reached the center span, I noticed somebody standing farther out, yellow reflective jacket, white hard hat, looking over the railing. I figured it was one of the inspectors. I called out, "Hey, you can't be out here." No response. I walked a little closer. "You hear me?" Still nothing. He never turned around, never acknowledged me, just stood there, looking down into the river. I stopped about 30 feet away. Something didn't feel right. Every single person on our crew wore bright orange jackets, not yellow. I raised my flashlight. The beam landed right on him. The jacket reflected back, but I couldn't make out a face, just darkness where his face should have been. Then the crane horn blasted behind me. One long warning. I turned around. The foreman was waving both arms, pointing toward me. I looked back. The man was gone. There was nowhere he could have gone. The bridge deck ended another 20 feet ahead. No ladders, no platforms, nothing. I walked the rest of the way. Checked every corner. Nobody. When I got back, the foreman looked irritated. "What were you doing standing out there?" I wasn't standing. I was talking to somebody. He frowned. "Talking to who?" "The guy in the yellow jacket." Every conversation around us stopped. The crane operator climbed down from his cab. "You saw him too?" I stared at him. "What do you mean?" He looked toward the bridge. "I've seen him 3 different nights." Nobody laughed. Nobody said I was imagining things. One of the older welders finally spoke up. "Old bridge took 3 men's lives before it was finished. They say one of them still checks on the work." I didn't believe ghost stories. Still don't. But I know what I saw. And I know one more thing. Every picture taken that night shows somebody standing at the end of the bridge, wearing a yellow jacket, watching us work. Nobody remembers him being there. Except the camera. I'll be honest, that one would have had me asking for a different job. There's something unsettling about realizing the camera caught something you didn't. All right, we've got one last story, and this final one might be the strangest of them all. This last story was shared by a heavy equipment operator from Arizona. You know, road construction crews don't just build new roads. Sometimes they tear old ones apart. And every now and then, they uncover things that were forgotten a long time ago. Here's what he had to say. "I run an excavator. Been doing it for almost 20 years. Most days I'm digging trenches, moving dirt, loading dump trucks. Nothing exciting. This happened while our crew was widening an old state highway outside a small desert town. The project stretched for miles. Most of it was empty desert. Cactus, mesquite trees, and abandoned foundations that nobody could identify anymore. Our supervisor warned us before we started. If you uncover anything unusual, stop digging. Call me. Most of us assumed he meant old utilities, maybe an abandoned water line, nothing more. Around 4 a.m, I was cutting into the shoulder of the old highway. The bucket caught something solid, not rock, not concrete. It sounded hollow. I climbed down to take a look. Half buried in the dirt was an old wooden door, lying flat beneath the ground. It even had a rusted doorknob. I called the foreman over. He stared at it for a minute, then shrugged. Probably an old cellar. Let's uncover it. We spent the next 20 minutes brushing dirt away. The whole thing was intact. The hinges, the frame, even the old brass latch. It looked like someone had buried an entire doorway, right there beneath the highway. The foreman reached for the handle. It wouldn't budge. Probably collapsed underneath. He told us to leave it alone until daylight. We covered it with orange cones, marked the location, and went back to work. The rest of the shift, I couldn't stop looking over there. Every now and then, I could have sworn the door had moved, just a little, like it wasn't sitting quite the way I remembered. I blamed the heat. Even before sunrise, the desert can play tricks on your eyes. About an hour later, the laborer assigned to watch the cones came running toward us. "You guys messing with me?" The foreman frowned. "What are you talking about? The door. It's open." Every machine on the site shut down. We walked over together. Sure enough, the door stood open about 6 inches. Nobody admitted touching it. The foreman looked inside. Nothing. Just darkness. He grabbed a flashlight, shined it through the opening. The beam disappeared. Didn't hit dirt. Didn't hit a floor. It was just black. He slammed the door shut, locked the latch with a piece of wire, then called the state archaeologist. By the time they arrived later that morning, the door was gone, not open, gone. There wasn't even a hole anymore, just solid earth, like we'd imagined the whole thing. The archaeologist looked at the disturbed soil, asked if we were sure about what we'd seen. Every one of us told the same story. He nodded slowly, then asked us a question. "Did any of you try opening it after sunrise?" We all shook our heads. He smiled. "Good, because there shouldn't have been a door there." Years later, I was eating lunch with an older surveyor who'd worked that same highway decades before. I told him the story. He got real quiet, then said, "My father worked on the original road. He told me they buried an old homestead when they rerouted the highway." I asked, "So the door was real?" He looked out toward the desert, then shook his head. "No. The house burned down 30 years before they built that road. There shouldn't have been anything left to bury. I still don't know what we found that morning. Maybe it was an old cellar. Maybe somebody was playing a trick on us. Or maybe some things don't stay buried, no matter how many tons of asphalt you pave over them. You know, the more stories I read from people who work overnight, the more I realized they all have something in common. They're working in places most of us never see, long after everyone else has gone home. Whether it's truck drivers, tow truck operators, snowplow drivers, or road construction crews, they're out there when the roads are empty. And sometimes, maybe they're not as empty as they seem. If you enjoyed these stories, let me know which one got to you the most. And if you've ever worked construction, especially on a night crew, I'd love to hear your story down in the comments. Who knows? It might end up in a future video. Until next time, keep the fires burning. And the stories, if you'll stay scared.